All right, settle down. Okay, we got some technical difficulties. Oh wait, we got Shane. Shane's on, and now we're waiting for John. So yeah, sorry we're about a minute late, but it's a situation where we were running into some technical difficulty. Our guest Frank couldn't hear me. Anyway, you don't need to hear about that. But we're slowly piecing it together. My name's Ken from the YouTube channel History X. Welcome to Museum Ship Mafia. And to my left, we've got Connor, the admin for the Museum Ships Facebook group. Below me, we've got Shane Stevenson, curator for the Buffalo Naval Park. And the guy in the lower right hand, we're going to get to him in a second. Don't worry about him. All right. And let's see. So, yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about, there we go, the Blue Angels and other things. But I thought this is a little bit of an interesting topic because, well, we always talk about museum ships, right? Historical naval stories, anything along those lines. This is different. And I think you guys are going to get a big kick out of this. Our guest, you might find a little annoying because you're going to ask yourself, how can one guy do all of these different things? Don't worry. We're going to get to the bottom of that in a little bit. Let's see. So, like I said, helping me. Whoops. Connor, are you doing that?
Nope. That's all you.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, helping me, we've got Shane Stevenson from the Buffalo Naval Park, John Epp joining us from the USS Slater. I picked photos showing their vessels in snow and ice. I thought that was pretty clever.
Clever.
I thought that was very clever, actually.
Very clever.
Yeah, yeah. And as I said, Connor from the Museum Ships Facebook group. Can't do this without subscribers and viewers. So tonight, while we're talking to our guests, submit your comments, submit your questions. Let us know what the temperature is, where you're watching from, and we'd love to put your comments up on the screen. Connor will be taking care of all of that. So tonight, it's another episode of our author series in collaboration with the U.S. Naval Institute Press. We've had so many authors on in the past, and Frank, who we're having on tonight, I think you guys are going to be thrilled with. Let's see. So I'm going to pull this up. All right. U.S. Navy Commander Frank Weisser, author of the book Lead Solo. And I just want to briefly run down Frank's background. It's crazy. Okay. Deployed in combat 3 separate times, which includes Afghanistan and Iraq. More than 5,000 flight hours in military jets, 500 carrier arrested landings, yada, yada, yada. Okay, we've all heard that. But master's degree in systems analysis from the Naval Postgraduate School in September 2009, Frank? What's that all about? Don't answer. We got more. Multiple personal and unit awards, 2-time Blue Angels pilot. We're going to hit him with a bunch of questions about that. But then also, due to his extreme low altitude and inverted flying experience, he was the front seat pilot for a film came out a few years ago. I don't know if you've heard of it, called Top Gun Maverick. Anybody? He filmed the most complex. Yeah, filmed the most complex and memorable air combat scenes. So we got a lot of questions to ask this guy. Plus, he's type rated in the Gulf Stream, Type 4, Type 5, and he resides in a private air park in North Georgia. I don't know. I want to ask about the private air park. Do you still live there?
I do. Yep, we love it. It's they're probably more common in the South where everything's flat, but we live in the mountains. Our house is at 3,000 feet. The runway's at 2,700. And there's a 5,000 foot long runway that's kind of cut in between the mountains. So you can come and go. We don't live properly on the runway, but a lot of folks do. We have a hangar that's on the runway, so we can land, park the plane in the hangar, and be to the house within a minute. It's really cool. And the whole neighborhood's aviation. So when you're getting together, it's pretty easy, whether you're 18 and just learn to fly or whether you're 80 and you've been doing it your whole life. It's a really cool community.
Now in my flying days, everyone would decorate their hangar for Christmas. Do you guys do that?
Some people do. Yeah, we run to this thing about covenants and what people can and can't do with their various artwork and decorations. But yeah, we're pretty well decorated, I think.
And do you currently fly a Gulfstream?
I do. Yep. So I got type rated in the G450 and 550 while I was still active duty during COVID because I was attached to the Blues. We were doing flyovers of hospitals, and there was a period where I wasn't needed, so I went down to Savannah, got type rated. It takes about a month, and it was a really unique flying thing for me because I'd spent my whole life as a single pilot, single seat airplane. So to go to a large airplane like that where there's two of you, I was absolutely out of sorts trying to figure out how to work with somebody else up in the front. But it's an awesome airplane, and I've flown it the last couple of years, sort of part time when I have free time. And then this past spring, summer, I went down again and got type rated in the G700, 800, which is an incredible machine.
You weren't used to sharing the controls.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, you're not used to sharing anything when you're a single seat airplane, and really, there's this thing where, one pilot can do their job for sure and fly an airplane around and fight an airplane like we do in the F-18. And sometimes when you combine them, whether it's a Wizzo in the back seat or whether it's another pilot in the front seat, 1 + 1 can be 2, but sometimes 1 + 1 can be less than 1. If it's not a good crew pairing, if they don't work well together, then you can really detract from someone's ability to fly the airplane or manage the cockpit.
Now, I don't even know where to begin with your story because, like I said in your description, combat experience, Blue Angels, you're a stunt pilot for a major motion picture. Can you put that in order for us? Where did you start?
Certainly I can put it in order of importance for me. And, I have these shiny objects that brings me to certain events, and that's Blue Angels and Top Gun Maverick. But personally, and I think most guys would tell you this, whether they've been on the Blues or been Top Gun instructors or test pilots or whatever, for me, the most important time of my service was unquestionably the picture that's up there right now. It's coming and going off an aircraft carrier, combat sorties over Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, we're a supporting element in that whole thing. So the aircraft carrier supports the pilots. There's not any natural weapons. I remember hearing this when I was at the Naval Academy, that if you're talking about the natural weapons of a Marine squad, the Marine officer, their weapon is their brain. And they're using their brain as their weapon to fight their platoon or their company. And for us on the aircraft carrier, our weapon is the plane. So you might have 40 or 50 fighters, and that's the weapon system for this 6,000 person carrier. But once we launch, for the majority of our missions, we're a supporting element. We're just there to make sure the ground support element is taken care of. And that's a really cool aspect of it, to be out there knowing that you can deliver an immense amount of firepower in a short amount of time to men and women on the ground who need your support. So that's, for me, unquestionably, that's the most important time. Over 2 years spent at sea flying combat missions, and I'm really proud of that time. Blue Angels obviously garner their own attention for what they are, but truly, as an organization, when we're at our best, it's we're not doing it there for us. We're signing autographs on behalf of the men and women who can't be there to do it, the real heroes who are out at sea fighting. We are talking about, after our show ends, this air show gives us the credibility to tell the story of what you're seeing on the screen. We're out there to say, if you thought that air show was cool, man, if you could be at sea on an aircraft carrier, it would blow your mind. It's way cooler than this air show. And so that's the order of priority for me, unquestionably. As in terms of how it all happened, it sort of was backwards. I went to a squadron first, combat deployments, then to the Blue Angels, then more combat deployments, then back to the Blue Angels, and kind of at the end of it all was Top Gun Maverick.
Mark asked the question, these are F-18s, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And they just let you roam around on the deck, take pictures like this?
Most of the pictures I sent you in advance of this were just pictures I had of me flying. So if you're on the aircraft carrier, there's photographers everywhere, and they'll upload pictures. Selfish on my end. If it was some time that I was flying, landing, launching, whatever, I would snag it, I'd screenshot it or copy it. Just because, it's an interesting thing. You disappear from your family for 6, 8, 10 months. And then you get back together, and I want to see pictures of my kids and all their adventures and what they've been up to. And they kind of want to see what I've been up to also. So now this is 10 years ago. The connectivity was really limited. You might have an hour of internet connectivity every day. And that would be to email back and forth, to maybe download the paper to try to catch up on current events. I have these big black holes in my life of things that happened where someone would say something innocuous like, oh yeah, well, when Whitney Houston died, and I'd say, Whitney Houston died? When did that happen? Oh, I was deployed. Yeah, I have these black voids of like knowing what happened in the world, right? And so I would grab pictures occasionally if I knew it was me, so I could send them home to my wife and kids and say, perfect day to fly, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Now, real quick, let's check in. I think I can hear your audio. Your audio is perfect. Your video is perfect. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
All right. Fantastic. Let's proceed. Let's see. Now, Frank was nice enough to provide us with a bunch of images tonight. We're going to be pulling these up on the screen. But Frank, I apologize if they were supposed to be in any particular order.
They were not. I'm happy to bounce all around as you see fit.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So I don't expect you to say that a picture like this came first in your career. Let me pull this up here. Yeah. I don't expect you to tell me that you immediately jumped into Blue Angels, but I also don't expect you to tell me that you immediately jumped into combat experience either. So where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, your point's super valid. You don't jump right into combat, and you certainly don't jump into the Blue Angels. And now the combat ops it is the bread and butter, is what we do. We do require the Blue Angels to have a great deal of experience before we put them in an airplane over 1 million people. And, you know, I use an example when I talk to large groups about dealing with adversity and preparation and focus. And I'll show an example of an airplane crashing when it loses its right engine during a slow speed pass. But the example is if that happened at 20 or 30,000 feet, whether you're in combat or not, that airplane's very recoverable. But if it happens at 200 feet, you're lucky to save the airplane or save yourself. And so the trick with the Blue Angels is where it's such close formation, you're so low to the ground that you have to have the experience in the airplane so that when stuff does go wrong, because it goes wrong all the time, that you're able to react appropriately based on experience. And the same thing's true with combat. But of course, my first time flying in combat was off the Theodore Roosevelt when I was a Navy lieutenant. And the idea is that I'm never by myself. First of all, you're always with another pilot, and they're always senior to you. And you're the wingman in that whole relationship. So it's only later in your life that you're flying into combat as the senior person, as the flight leader. So the combat did come first to that degree. But also keep in mind, you're 2 years in flight school, and then you're another year learning the F-18 before you ever get to a squadron. And then traditionally, you're in a fairly lengthy workup to get you ready. So when all that happens appropriately, you're very experienced by the time you're deploying in combat.
Connor, doesn't this picture just annoy you? I mean, look how cool that shot is. And,
I mean, I wouldn't say no. I'm impressed. Like
what's that?
I'm quite frankly impressed. This is.
I know. I mean, look at this. It doesn't get any better than this. At least I don't think so. So, two-time Blue Angels pilot. I don't exactly know what that means. I mean, for me, if you're in the Blue Angels, you're in the Blue Angels. But it sounds to me like you get a time to serve and then you're out.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you traditionally do as a pilot, you do a 2-year flying rotation, and then if the first year you find yourself as the narrator, and then on to be the solo pilot, then it's a 3-year assignment. And then
wait, as a narrator.
So my first year, I was Blue Angel number 7, and that job, if you're there are only 6 airplanes in the air show. The number 7 pilot is what we call our advanced pilot, and so that pilot will show up a day early to every air show and set that show up. You know, what we would call in a traditional squadron like the officer in charge or the detachment officer in charge. And the idea is that they're the point man for that air show. And so you arrive early, you meet with the FAA and the local airport staff, and you organize maybe 50 people to make sure the air show runs well. And it kind of is a thing where if the Blue Angel part, we're traditionally the closing act of an air show that might last 4 or 5 hours. And we're heavily burdensome in terms of requirements. And so if they're prepared for us, then they're generally prepared for the whole show. And so that pilot will show up a day early. And then the fun part of that job is that when you show up early, you take people for rides. So you fly in a 2-seat airplane, you fly with one of your mechanics. He gets out, sets up all the maintenance equipment for that show. This was a video I had taken from my airplane with a friend of mine named Todd Royals when we were flying together for one of the last F-18 legacy flights we did up and down the Pensacola Beach show. But that advanced pilot will show up and then give backseat rides to people. They might be celebrities, they might be local media, they might be influencers in some way, shape, or form. And we're giving them a ride so they can then kind of use that experience. I mean, you imagine if they're putting a 2 or 3 minute section on TV, then that's worth, from an advertising perspective, it's terrific for the air show, but it's also great for the Navy and for the Blue Angels to have that. So the 7 pilot flies around, guests in the back seat, and then sets up the show. And then during the air show, traditionally narrates the show.
That's where the narration comes in.
Yeah, I think when the Blue Angels was in Buffalo, it was the Buffalo Bills head coach that got that special seat.
Yeah,
or something about that.
We generally fly people who are media or who just by existing kind of deserve their own media. You know, they're famous, they're celebrities, so wherever they go, media follows them. And, you know, I flew a guy when I was number 7, this is a long time ago, and he was a Red Sox pitcher, a knuckleballer named Tim Wakefield. And he was just a world-class guy, and sadly passed away recently, but just an awesome person to be around and then to fly. And he pops out of the airplane. I think his dad had been a Marine pilot, but he gets out and I think it was like New England Sport Network was there, ESPN was there. They do interviews on the ramp. And they said, how does this compare to being the MVP of the World Series? And he said, it doesn't compare. I miss my calling. I wish I'd been a fighter pilot.
No kidding.
You picture that, you're like, man, there's like a bazillion young men who idolize this guy. And for him to say that, I mean, there's not enough advertising budget in 100 years for the Navy to beat something like that, because it's just genuine and real.
Shane had mentioned Buffalo, and you had shared this was actually filmed or recorded over Buffalo.
Yeah, my last job in the Navy was moving us to the Super Hornet airplane, and then to stay current, I would sometimes fly with the team and do these photo missions. And I'd flown one of my last flights to the Navy with one of our photographers who had put this short video together, and it shows us flying over Buffalo. It was such a beautiful city. We got some incredible pictures and videos from it, but it's a whole different aspect. You know, everyone can see the air show from the ground, and they can see it from different areas around, you know, especially a place like that. But to see the air show from the sky, as if you're in the airplanes with them, is a really cool viewpoint. So I thought, you know, once I heard he was from Buffalo, I thought he would really enjoy this, because it's to me, it's super cool to see it.
This is kind of a weird question, but what's an unwritten rule inside the Blue Angels that outsiders never hear about?
We have a number of rules where we hold ourselves to a certain standard. If you, for example, if you don't have 2 pins with you in your flight suit, one for, you know, a Sharpie for signing a certain kind of picture, and then another pin for whatever you need to write with. If you don't have either of those pins with you, then you're paying a fine at the end of the day.
Seriously?
At any point in the day, you bet. And if you don't, if you have your sunglasses on, something as simple as sunglasses, if you have your sunglasses on and you don't take them off when you're talking to a young man or young lady, at any point, you know, you bend down, you make eye contact. If you don't take them off, that's a fine. And we have a gazillion different ways to fine each other, to hold ourselves to a higher standard.
Really? I you know what? I didn't know what to expect when, you know, by asking that question, but you know, when you talk about 2 pens, sunglass etiquette, I never would have thought it'd be something like that.
Yeah.
I figured it'd be something like, you forgot to plug in your headset microphone. I mean, which is stupid, because I'm sure you do comms checks before you guys ever take off. But, you know, it's just to talk about like something as simple as 2 pens. I think that's great.
It also could be something as simple as if they have a photo of the team and you sign over the wrong airplane. You know, if I'm number 6 that year and I sign over the number 6 jet over my picture, but if you're number 5 or you're number 1 and I sign over you, well, then I'm most definitely paying a fine, because I've you know, kids will go around and try to collect every autograph or something at the end of an air show. And so if you dork it up for everybody, then you're paying for that.
Yeah.
That ever a heated moment between pilots after a flight, you know, when someone crossed a line or made a mistake? You don't need to name names or anything like that.
I mean, to the degree that, you know, we jokingly say that Blue Angels is kind of like a forever deployment. And then at some point during deployments, you're with each other so much, personalities start to grate on each other, and you can find things that rub you wrong that should be sort of irrelevant normally. And the Blue Angels are like that, because we're together. It's all of us together all the time, almost every single day of the year, save maybe Christmas or something like that. And so you do have some rubs, but we work really hard to find the right individuals. I mean, we're not going to take a pilot or any officer who's not incredibly competent at their job. So we have all the grades. We have every piece of data you can get on these pilots before they ever apply to us. But then what you're really looking for is, can they proudly represent the Navy and Marine Corps? Are they going to be good? Can they speak intelligently on what we do? Can they speak with genuine passion? Do they really love serving their country? And if that's not true, then we don't want them. And then the final piece is, can they get along with everybody else? Do they have the right personality to roll with the punches, to be able to give constructive criticism and not take offense when it's given to them, that sort of thing. So truthfully, we don't really have a whole lot of heated moments. I would struggle to think of even a couple over almost 10 years of being around that team. Very, very few. And they're usually handled with a great deal of professionalism and respect. There's certainly none where you see people just in really heated screaming matches.
You are here tonight. Like I said at the start of our video, it's an opportunity that we've enjoyed for the over the year of having different authors on with the U.S. Naval Institute Press, and of course you're here tonight to promote your book, Lead Solo. And so I took a quick look at this when we knew you were having on. What you're talking about a few moments ago, your book's pretty much about team culture and dynamics, correct?
That's right. Yep.
So what brought this on?
Well, the background of it, and I will say with total honesty and clarity that I was very hesitant to write a book and was quite reluctant to do it for a long time. And there have been jokes about various different groups of, service members who, you add a week to whatever training cycle you're in so that you can go get your editor and your publisher lined up. And I take great offense to people who leverage their military career for personal financial gain. It frustrates me to my core. No different than people who abuse the VA or any other number of other things. It cheapens the service in my mind when those things happen. So following Top Gun Maverick, there were a variety of requests. I had hosted a gentleman who had been an Emmy award-winning producer who had come out to our house and flown with me, and we had spent a great deal of time together putting something together for his museum or hotel memorial museum. And in doing so, produced a small little piece that eventually aired on Good Morning America, and the day after the movie came out. And when that sort of happened, the cat was out of the bag. I kind of couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. And it was pretty wild, the number of people that were finding me and on no social media at all with no published information, and asking, one day it's, can you talk to the C-suite level folks at a major Fortune 500 company? The next day is, can you talk to our 4-year-olds? And the next day it's, can you talk to a men's night at a Southern Baptist church? And it ran the gamut. And one of those events was up at the Naval Academy talking to the midshipmen as part of the USNI Warfighter Forum. And when it finished, I got an email from one of the gentlemen who set it up and said, listening to you talk to the midshipmen specifically about certain aspects, because my aviation career was not intended to happen in the first place. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I went to the Naval Academy specifically to be a Navy SEAL, laser focused on that one goal, and felt like my life was a failure the moment I found out I couldn't do that. And that was a really hard thing for me to get over.
Okay, so hold on a second. So first and foremost, it's a major event to be accepted to the Naval Academy, any military academy, but it's not an easy thing. So you entered the Naval Academy, but like you said a few moments ago, with every intention of becoming a SEAL, and you were rejected.
I was, you bet. And it was a hard pill to swallow, especially at 22, when you'd spent, for me, like age 12 to 22, that was all I'd want to do my whole life. And the trick with putting aviation second, and that is a bit of a rub point, and they kind of tell you that ahead of time, that they want you to put down SWO second, because if you go to a ship and get qualified, you can transfer to the SEALs a couple of years later. And in aviation, you just can't do that. You're a minimum service requirement of 10 years because of the time to train. And so you kind of know that. But to me, the challenge, I had wanted to be a SEAL. I certainly had. But the other aspect of aviation is I had so many friends who were so much smarter and better than me at everything. And they had wanted to be pilots and they had flown a lot. So the chance of me going down to flight successful seemed almost impossible. And so I had put down SEAL, like I said, for a variety of reasons, and felt like I was competitive for it, but didn't get it. And then felt like I'd sort of failed into aviation. And then to say it went downhill from there, it's an understatement. I mean, I couldn't do a thing right. I couldn't pass the test to get through ground school. I couldn't taxi the airplane right to even be allowed to take off. When I did take off, I couldn't land the stupid thing. So I was a proverbial hot mess. And I was a slow learner in a variety of ways. And I was being evaluated with people who had been doing it for a long time. And so I had explained this to the midshipmen and said, if you watch this, let's look at some Top Gun videos. I want you guys to recognize that I had a really cool aviation career, and one that I'm very proud of, and got to do some really incredible things. And we're watching this F-18 pass, feed over this guard shack in Top Gun Maverick. But I failed my check ride. I was one flight away from getting kicked out of flight school before I'd ever been in an airplane by myself. And the point was to share with them that, like to your point, people at any service academy or in college or in general, they haven't failed it a whole lot. They've been pretty darn successful or they wouldn't be there. And so the danger is some of these young men and women are so used to success that when they do find failure and they encounter it, it can be, career ending or life ending or something like that. So my point was just to share that most of them, probably the people that they look up to and their mentors, probably failed a lot. They just don't know about it. The only difference was those people just didn't give up. They just kept at it. I was listening to a podcast recently that I really enjoyed. It was the Sean Ryan show with Jocko on. And, they said, what's your advice for young men? And he just said, don't give up. And for sure, that's the answer. And it's true if you're a buds. I spent a month out at Mini Buds and loved it and thought it was great. And I knew it's what I wanted to do, but just don't quit. And so for me, I failed at everything. I just didn't quit. And that proved to be very helpful in my military career. And so this is a long road to a short house, and I apologize for dragging this out. The point was I gave them this talk to the midshipmen. The folks at USNI thought that might be helpful for some more midshipmen and some more young men and women to hear. So they asked if I could turn it into a short book and explain some of these lessons, some of the experiences I had. My reluctance was simply that I didn't want to write a book about me. I felt like I could close my eyes and name, no kidding, I can name 100 people who are better in the airplane than me, better officers than me, more motivated, stayed in longer, everything. And I revere them. Those guys are my heroes. I wanted them to write the book. And it felt only right that it would be them. And so we sort of went back and forth. And it was my wife who had the good sense to say to me, they're asking you to write the book. This isn't a platform you asked for that you wanted, but it is your platform right now. So if they're asking you to write the book, just do it. But write it about your friends. Write it about your sailors. Write it about your Marines. And I thought, that's actually a genius idea. And so I went back, I proposed that basically. And then I said, the other critical aspect of this to me is I don't want to make any money off this. I don't mind putting in the time and the work, but it has to go to a good cause for me to be able to sleep well at night. So they were totally open to that. Not only were they open to me putting my author royalties towards a charity that mattered to me, but they agreed to chip in even more money than they would normally give to also go to that charity. And so that's called the Wingman Foundation, totally kick-ass charity, founded by Marines, and they take care of families after mishaps. And so the minute, go ahead. Sorry.
No, do me a favor and finish your thought, because I didn't want to step on that. Anytime you're talking about a charity or any type of benefit, I want to hear about it. So do me a favor, finish that.
Yeah, I think very highly of the charity. One of you mentioned earlier about the Blue Angels and the second time, and that is rare. When I went back a second time, it was under sad circumstances. A gentleman named Jeff Coos had passed away, and he died on takeoff. And so I filled in for him. And the challenge with the Blue Angels is when something like that happens, you can't just go back out into the fleet and grab another pilot and train them up. You have to you go through a very small Rolodex of people who've flown that position, and that's who you can use. And so as luck might have it, I was basically the only person whose timing and career worked that I could come back and fill in. So I came in and filled in for Jeff for the next 2 years. But
wait, I remember that. Was that like, you said on takeoff? He crashed on takeoff?
It was the Nashville Air Show in 2016, June 2nd of 2016. And it was at the Smyrna Airport, which is just southeast of Nashville. And it was one of these heartbreaking things. The expression, like, only the good die young, kind of always seems to ring true, especially when it's people Everyone who I've lost in aviation are the best of everyone I've ever served with or worked with. And I never met Jeff face to face, but I know because of the massive hole he left in our squadron, in the families, that, was just a world-class man and father and Marine. And so when you fill in that position, it's not an easy thing to do to go back in there. But what I watched as we got to know his widow and his children was that they were supported by a lot of people, and they were very blessed in that regard. But one charity that swooped in is called the Wingman Foundation, and it's a group of Marines that just, in your darkest moments, you can picture a widow and all of the bad things you think about in the moments after a crash and the days and the weeks that follow. You think about all the things that don't matter. How do I pay my bills next month? What are my kids going to do for college? How am I going to afford my car payment? And that stuff doesn't matter. But in the moment, you need to focus on your family, on your loved ones, on mourning the loss of your spouse. And so this charity comes and says, in the short term, we've got everything. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. And that even is more important when if it's like a CH-46, or if it's something where there are a lot of enlisted Marines who might not have the same nature and nurture that someone like Jeff had as a Marine captain in a Blue Angel. And so the charity's terrific. I think very highly of them and what they do. And so it was important to me that, one, anytime I can talk about them, I certainly will. And two, if they can make some small amount of money off my book, then even better.
I wish I had a picture of him that I could put up on the screen. But going back to what you had said earlier, and I want to have, I don't want to be the one to ask all the questions. I got a ton of questions, but I want Shane and John and Connor to jump in as well. But before we do that, you had made the comment that whoever you look at, you know, role model or whatever, 9 times out of 10, people don't realize how many times that person has stumbled or failed or screwed up or got kicked out of something, you know, got kicked out of college to only become the drummer in a iconic band, or in your case, you know, to be, you know, to not make the SEALs. And then all of a sudden here you are, combat veteran, and you're in the Blue Angels. Have you ever heard of a guy by the name of Greg Pappy Boyington?
I think I have.
You know who I'm talking about?
I do.
So yeah, World War II ace. He flew the Corsairs, and he was part of the Marine Squadron. I think it was VF 214, and he wrote the book Baba Black Sheep. And at the very end of the book, he basically, you epitomize, like, or you describe the last sentence of the book, which is, show me a hero and I'll prove he's a bum. you guys have never heard that before? Oh, no. And then here's Frank talking about, I mean, it literally is that. It's like, no matter how high a pedestal you put someone on, they've got faults. They've made mistakes. They've screwed up. And then here's Frank telling that story about, you know, he's in the academy, which is huge, but then can't make the SEALs. And now here you are. I don't know. I think it's a great story, man. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think the best learning is through failing and working through that. And
isn't it?
You know, how many times do people just give up, right? They want to try something, they fail once, and then they're like, well, I'm just not going to bother trying it again. And that's 100%. Probably 95% of what makes people successful, or what makes people not fully achieve their goal, is just that little click in your head that says, I'm not going to do it anymore. And then other people say, I'm going to continue striving and achieving, even if it wasn't the original goal. And I love how you said that, Frank. And less eloquently, Ken. Yes.
I was, the Naval Institute was wonderful for a gazillion reasons. And everything that's decent about that book is because of them. You know, my idea for how it was laid out, for the artwork, for the title, for everything was so terrible. Everything I came up with was awful, but everything they came up with was terrific. And the only small little victory I had was I asked to start every chapter with a quote. And that's maybe corny. I'm a big fan of John Krakauer as an author. I've read everything he's ever written, and he was the first person, I think it was when I read Into Thin Air, that he started chapters off with quotes. And so, as you say that, as I'm going through various quotes, and the quote had to apply to the points I was trying to make in that chapter. But I have a chapter on failure, and as I was going through obvious quotes that would work, what I went with was one that says, "We're all failures. At least the best of us are." Mm-hmm. But there were so many quotes that are so perfect. You know, I've never failed. I just found 10,000 things that didn't work, or failures, the opportunity to begin again more intelligently. I could recite a dozen, and they're all appropriate. And it's so true. And we can all talk about it, and it's easy to talk about, and it's logical and intuitive. But in the moment, to do it is really hard sometimes, to fail and to actually pick yourself up and reorient yourself and say, all right, I'm doing it again. That's hard. That takes guts.
What are some of the other, we've talked about failure, pushing through, not giving up. What are some of the other lessons that you had as you reflected on the different chapters that you're writing? What other lessons did you say were really important that you wanted to impart to the reader?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things. One, I'm certainly not an author. I felt like I was the opposite of that. I was a math major, and so the story, I feel like it reads a little different. It's me just telling a story. It's probably not. It's not written like a professional author would write. But and the people I know well who have written me and said they read it and said, I just felt like you were sitting in the family room just talking to me about a career in aviation and sharing some fun stories. So I didn't take that as a slight. I took that as it's different perhaps, but that's sort of how I intended it. It's the only way I knew how to do it. And I do think as I wrote it in essentially the order it's in the book, and I felt like I got a little bit better. You know, there's this learning aspect that happens, or even if you nerd out, it's the coefficient of learning is how much better you get slowly as you do the same thing. And for me, that was just writing and telling stories and then shaping it into the lessons I was trying to portray. But as the chapters went on, I think I was better at doing that. And then, so failure, of course, was I thought an important one for me to share. I added a chapter on courage that I'm happy to talk about that I don't usually talk about in speeches and presentations. But then I also talked a great deal about communication, and that's a big one for the Blue Angels. And I did it because, you know, I can give a little backstory and how we fly our formation around, because it's not necessarily intuitive how we move these airplanes around all together. You have to do it with you're almost singing to each other as you go through it, where you're talking on the radio, you're depressing the comm button and talking, and then everyone's moving the airplanes based on what you say. And so there is that aspect of communication. But the really important stuff for us as Blue Angels, and kind of what I alluded to earlier, is the idea that we as a group intend to be hard on each other, but hardest on ourselves. And if we admit our own failures, if we acknowledge our weaknesses, if we do the whole extreme ownership aspect, that I'm going to tell you what I screwed up long before I have to hear it from you. If you do that, it makes you vulnerable. It makes you uncomfortable when we're not used to doing that. But if you do it, if you can become part of our culture and acknowledge and admit failures during the day, in the airplane, on the ground, whatever the case might be, then when it comes to the debrief, it goes so much better. And the real trick for it is, as a leadership lesson, it has to start with the senior person. And if the senior person in any relationship, whether it's a group of 2 or a group of 2,000, if they're willing to stand up in front of a team and say, I screwed up, then it has this really powerful impact on the organization. Because you never look at that person and say, well, I used to respect you, but now I don't because you told me you messed up. Quite the opposite, is I respect you a whole lot more because I know you're great, and now you're telling me about times you messed up. You'd only do that if you're incredibly confident in yourself. And so that is something I share in the book. And it's a really valuable lesson, and that most people are just too scared to say they did something wrong. I read years ago that the 3 least commonly used words in the English language together were, I don't know, because no one ever is confident enough to admit they don't know something. You'd rather fake it till you make it. And so the next aspect of that would be, I screwed up. And people are really unwilling. I got out of the military and went into real estate development and general contracting. And I found it right away on job sites and working with a bunch of my subcontractors out in the field, was that no one ever wanted to say they didn't know something, and no one ever would admit they screwed up. Only the most confident would. And those are the ones who succeed. But there's this, it takes a bit of courage and confidence to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're looking at video. Again, this is video that was taken during a show that you guys did over Buffalo. And when we did the intro, I had mentioned that, 5,000, was it 5,000 combat flight hours, mission hours? It was an incredible number. But when you're flying with the Blue Angels, is there any kind of maneuver let's just go with maneuver that was one that you dreaded, maybe because it was more physically punishing? And what toll does that take after all of these shows that you guys do? I mean, how many shows do you do in the course of a season?
We go with a saying that every practice is a show and every show is a practice. And that kind of is, you probably heard the expression, either if it ain't raining, we ain't training, or if you bleed in training, you won't. We bleed in training, so we don't bleed in combat. It's the same mentality, meaning if we treat every practice like it's an air show in front of 1 million people and bring that level of intensity to it, then we'll get more out of the practice. And when you get to the air show, if you're the person who's going to be uncomfortable performing in front of 1 million people, if you just treat it like a practice, then it's a non-event. It's just every single day of the week. Mm-hmm. But for us, we'll fly 6 days a week, and certainly during training, multiple times a day. And so you fly that same air show with the same people hundreds and hundreds of times over the course of a single show season. And then over the course of 2 or 3 years, you'll fly that air show, thousands of times. And to your point, there are a couple maneuvers, whether you're a solo pilot like I was, or whether you're a diamond pilot. I mean, that video shows me flying, taking video of one of the diamond maneuvers where all four of them are really close together. And as a solo pilot, I'm not supposed to tell you that I like any of the diamond maneuvers. That's kind of our internal rivalry and competition between the two elements. But that maneuver is so insanely cool for so many reasons. And you can, if you sit down in F-18, the seat can move up and down vertically, and it's done with a little toggle switch on the left side. And the way we'll do it is because various people of various heights might get in and out of these airplanes. You'll sit down and you'll put your fist on the top of your helmet, and you'll hold it into the up position until the seat raises, till you barely feel the top of your fist touch the glass. And generally speaking, that's the right seat height for your body. And so from that seated position, your helmet is one fist distance off the glass. In that maneuver they're doing, if they were to pull the canopy jettison handle, which is a switch that doesn't eject you, it just makes the canopy go away. So now you're essentially flying a convertible. This isn't something you'd ever normally do. You do this if the cockpit has smoke or fumes in it and you can't get rid of it. And so that's the only way basically to keep flying the airplane. But if you were to jettison it, in that maneuver, the number 4 pilot, who's below everybody, could at one point reach up and grab the wings of Blue Angel 2 and 3 from his seated position, which is just insanely close anyway. But to do it in a descending, accelerating turn is just wild.
And then how are you feeling the next morning? Are you like sore? It's like, oh, my shoulder can't take much more of this. What are we talking about?
There's the G forces are punishing. There's no question about it, they're punishing. We don't wear a G suit in the Blue Angels because of how we have to fly with this stick on the spring. We put a spring into the airplane, and this is a very mechanical thing that the Blue Angels do to fly in close formation. And it's I compare it, it's probably a bad analogy, but if you remember when like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 80s, he'd have one of those chest things that you used to expand.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? It's like it springs like that on plastic handles. It's kind of that. And it comes out of the ground and it clips on mechanically to the stick, and it pulls the stick forward away from you as the pilot. And that's the maneuver I'm talking about, where number 4 in the bottom could grab the wings of 2 and 3 from his seat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Let me back that up. Damn it. I missed it.
I didn't know they had a Hercules done up in the colors as well.
Yeah, the C-130 is just an awesome addition to the squadron because it ferries around all of our men and women and our support equipment, but it also puts on an absolutely insane air show. It is wild what they're able to do with that airplane. I mean, I've been privileged to be in the flight station with them, and when they're doing their show, and the sight picture you see as a pilot in that big of an airplane is out of this world.
Do they ever fly it?
I've flown it on transits where, hopping up in the front for a moment, just to see how heavy the controls are, but not during an air show. No, but we would, if you've been in it a few times, they'd let us, stand between the two pilots during one of the practice shows or something. And, much respect to people who are flying an airplane that big and that powerful to that degree of precision and aggressiveness. I mean, it does this incredibly steep takeoff, a really steep landing. It's awesome. It's a super cool part of our squadron, and it's practical too because it brings everyone around. And then if anything goes wrong, those guys, they can hop in that thing. An engine explodes, some kind of system breaks. They can run to the nearest support facility or all the way back to Pensacola, grab it, and those airplanes are up in no time. So it is an absolute critical part of our team to be able to do our air show. A normal squadron might have 10 airplanes to have 4 or 5 ready at any point. We have 6 airplanes to have 6 ready at any point. So their support is absolutely invaluable.
This does actually lead me into a question that I had.
Go for it.
Yeah, so you're obviously flying F-18s, and you have flown both the Blue Angels and ones that are off carrier decks. Are there any like major modifications that are made on Blue Angel F-18s to make them more acrobatic, for lack of a better word?
Not more acrobatic necessarily. The roll rate is the roll rate. The performance is maybe slightly better because we take out some of the combat systems we don't use, so the airplane's lighter, and so lighter means better performance. But what we do add, a couple of those pictures showed, we have smoke that comes out of the airplane. A traditional Hornet is meant to not be seen rather than to be able to be followed easily because of a smoke trail. So the nose of the F-18 traditionally has a 20 millimeter cannon in it, a gun. And so that is removed, and we put a smoke tank in there that pipes through the airplane. The smoke comes out. It comes out in the form of smoke oil, but it hits the exhaust from the left engine, and then it turns into that white billowy smoke. But then the other thing we do, we add that spring I started talking about, which is a 40-pound spring that gives you better control. And then we also add, to your point about aerobatic maneuvers, we add an inverted fuel pump. And that one's really critical, because a normal F-18, 20 to 30 seconds upside down, you're going to flame out because the fuel is gravity fed. And so the inverted fuel pump allows us to continue to pump fuel into the engines while inverted for a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Part of the reason I asked as well is about 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to watch the Canadian flight team, the Snowbirds, do a show here in Thunder Bay. And while I didn't get an opportunity to talk to the pilots, a friend of mine did, and they asked, why didn't you fly F-18s? And they said that, if we did that, we wouldn't be able to do some of the maneuvers we do in our tutors. So it was just kind of interesting that I was kind of interested to see like what modifications were made so that F-18s could fly their show.
I think the other benefit is that we have so many F-18s in the Navy. It's not quite as big of a drag to grab 6 or 8 of them for an air show, whereas the Canadian Hornet fleet is slightly smaller. But I've gotten to ride with the lead solo of the Snowbirds before, and it's jaw-dropping to see what they're doing in those airplanes. They're having to think way – in an F-18, you can kind of power out of any mistake you've made. In an airplane like that, when you're in formation, you have to think way far ahead of the airplane to have the energy to make it for the rendezvous, to be able to complete the maneuver. And the airplane requires so much agility. I mean, it's like you picture someone like riding on a unicycle while juggling and also doing stand-up comedy and in a fight with someone else who's doing the same thing. They're just absolutely taxed to the limit physically in that airplane. It's really cool, and they do an awesome air show.
Yeah.
How are you doing? How are you doing on time? Do you have to? How much more time can we have with you?
Me personally, I'm yours. All good. I've got a cup of hot tea. I'm wide awake. So whatever you need from me is good. I'm happy to talk to you guys.
All right, John. Any questions for Frank right now?
Yeah, I have 2.
Go for it.
One is, are you guys capable of flying off of carriers for these shows, or is it strictly land-based?
That's a great question. There are some modifications you do to Hornet when it becomes carrier based. You increase the pressure on the tires. You probably service the snubber pressure, which keeps the hook down. But in general, we've had one of our old Blue Angel bosses took a Blue Angel jet and trapped, landed aboard an aircraft carrier just to do it in a Blue Angel airplane. There's some fun pictures online if you did that. Oh, by the way, a C-130 has also landed on an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, that I knew. Yeah.
Wild situation. But we don't do it with any regularity, as far as I know, but I don't think there's anything that would prevent us from doing it, aside from the fact the airplanes would get really dirty really fast. Carrier decks are not clean places. The airplanes come home from deployment just covered in 8 months worth of grease and grime. But no, it shouldn't be terribly. I wouldn't think it'd be terribly hard to do. There is certainly a pilot proficiency aspect. Before we send squadrons on deployment or to the carrier, we get them a lot of carrier landing practice. So we'd probably have to put our pilots through some kind of ramp up to that. But most of them are pretty experienced, so I wouldn't anticipate it being a huge challenge.
Now, has the Navy ever done a study to figure out how successful this program is in terms of recruiting?
If there's been a study, I haven't read it. Anecdotally, it's very effective. There are a number of people that we would fly around, 1-star, 4-star admirals who would get out of the airplane and say, well, I didn't know what to make of this, or I can't tell you what I anticipated, but I will tell you now that it was a wild experience. And I joined the Navy because I was a 12-year-old and saw the Blue Angels fly in Umpty Frat's town. And so that aspect matters. And then I think what we definitely see is at our local recruiting districts following air shows, there is a massive uptick for the time being following the show, because it's an hour-long advertisement. But really, we're planting seeds. We're not trying to convince someone who's a wayward, lost person at 22 to join the military. That certainly happens, and that's not a bad thing. But we're also planting seeds in hopefully 6, 8, 10, 12-year-olds to think about. And it doesn't have to be join the military. It can just be aviation has this really cool aspect. it is propelling you figuratively and literally off the ground into the air at supersonic speeds. It's challenging you to do things you didn't think were possible. And so we don't have to be there just to sign everybody up for the service. We want them to be there to challenge what they thought was possible and to apply themselves in ways they didn't think they could. And I think it does that very much so.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of oh, sorry, John, did you have a second?
No,
question?
go ahead, Shane. That was me actually. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Ken.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, like when the Blue Angels were in Buffalo, in that video, you show you talking to Sea Cadets, part of your Blue Angels team. So they met with 30 or 40 Sea Cadets, talking about leadership and, striving for your goals. I think there's also like a school aspect. Do Blue Angels go visit schools and
we
things
definitely
like that?
do.
Or,
Yeah, we'll send all of our pilots on Friday morning to each of the local high schools with the recruiter, just to talk about what we do and the intents. I would try to give a few minutes on why I chose to serve my country, and then what the experience has been for me thus far. But it's not one of these things where we're not passing our clipboard where you have to give your phone number and email address, because we're going to start hitting you up with advertisements.
Right.
That's just not what we do. We're looking to hopefully inspire and motivate rather than just sign up people for service.
Awesome.
When you look at a picture like this, and where was that one? There was another one. Okay, here you go. I want to pull up this one instead. You're talking about the public component of it. If I can't think of a better word to describe than that. You talk about, you got to have your Sharpie marker to sign autographs. You're spending time at the schools on Fridays. I mean, you're doing everything you can to get in front of the public, but I'm trying to think of how I can ask this. What's the strangest thing or funniest thing a fan has asked you as a Blue Angel? And I'm not talking, kids say the funniest things. I'm not talking about that. I mean, it's like, have you ever been like in an awkward spot where it's like, what? How do I?
Yeah, I have.
Because dealing with the public's not easy. Ask Shane and John. They give tours all the time. It's not easy.
Well, of course, after doing it for 10 years, I've had a number of awkward situations. Some are probably not appropriate for any audience, that I would repeat, because they were a little too risque or gross. But there are others where, for whatever reason, and this is pre-COVID, even when people weren't quite as sensitive to germs, but you'd have a guy comes up there and he's 60 years old and he's got, long hair and a mullet and it's pulled back in a ponytail, and there's a wife beater and they've been out in the sun all day long and they're just sweaty and gross. And he'd have a Sharpie and he'd put it in his mouth and rip it off and hand it and be like, "Sign my back, dude." And the back would just be like this hairy back. And you're like, buddy, I'm not allowed to sign skin, and I don't even want to touch your Sharpie now that you've just shoved it in your mouth. So you run into cases like that are a little disgusting. I had someone bring up an inflatable doll at a show in Reno, and not a PG-13 doll, a pretty inappropriate doll, and asked me to sign that. And so that was obviously that's in our long list of things we do not sign. And then I had a close friend of mine who I have a really close group of high school friends I grew up with, and they're great. They've been great supporters of mine. And we did a show in Rome, Georgia, and a bunch of them came to it. And one of my buddies, they're all, they're in the back of this line. There's, I don't know, tens of thousands of people out there after the show waiting for autographs. And this guy's a bit of a clown, but he's probably 4 or 5 people deep. And so he like leans over his shoulder, shouts at our other friends, but really anyone who listens, he's like, "Hey, never mind. That's number 5. We don't want him. That's the boring one. Everybody go right. 4's down that way." And I look back, I'm like, "You jerk, what are you doing, man?" But there's this sense of like when you're in a big crowd like that everyone's like, oh crap, we got the wrong guy. They couldn't see where they were. So long story short, everybody in front of me just cleared out. And then I had like 5 minutes with my buds, which was actually genius in the moment that he had the wherewithal to do that, to mock me and get some time to visit in the exact same statement. But yeah, those we'll spend 30 minutes out there usually, maybe more, depending on how many people are there. It's also pretty routine that as we wrap up, because there's a point where we've got to go debrief and get in our airplanes and get back to Pensacola before a certain time when the tower and the airport closes. And, you'll have grown men and women who are shoving things in your face when there's like a little 5 or 6-year-old kid down below being super polite. And so then you typically kind of gravitate towards the young men and women. And then at some point you get pulled off, you got to go. And it's not every week, but it's pretty routine that someone will say, "Get back here, I pay your salary." And you're like,
Oh, jeez.
"Oh man, I pay taxes too. We're all in this together, buddy. We got to go." So you have awkward times like that, but in general, it's great. And in general, it's a super fun time. And it is why we exist, right? The Blue Angels exist because we're there to tell everybody else's story. So I explain this to the degree I can, but the air show is really just a mechanism that gives us the credibility to be able to go out and have this important conversation. If a kid watches an air show that's overwhelming, they can see it, they can feel it, they can hear it. They see the airplanes land right in front of them, the parking brake set, the pilot hops out of the plane and walks right to them. That's kind of this like larger than life experience. Like, holy mackerel, was that you? Did you just fly that? That was incredible. And that's when, as I said before, you say, well, if you thought that was awesome, let me tell you right now, all of my buddies are flying off an aircraft carrier at night. And that's insane, actually. Mm-hmm. And so the Blue Angels exist to tell the real story, the cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. I want to get to one of the more interesting parts of your story, but before I do, Connor, John, Shane, any other questions?
No, it's just fascinating to listen to. Thank you so much, Frank, for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And you know what? Shane actually kind of makes a good point. I want to, for those of us, or for those of you that might be just jumping in on what we're talking about, we're talking to U.S. Navy Commander Frank Weisser, author of the book Lead Solo. Frank not only flew FA-18s over Afghanistan and Iraq, he was also a Blue Angel pilot, not once but twice. And we're going to get to one of the other crazy parts of his story. And I want to pull up this picture. Well, actually, no, I'm going to pull up this one. So take a look at this. Another irritating part of Frank's story. So take a look. Okay, so here's Frank, but look below. It says, what does it say? Captain Pete Mitchell, Maverick. Okay, so this guy here's the other picture. He was Maverick in Top Gun Maverick. So you were, correct me if I'm wrong, you were the lead stunt pilot, or no, not stunt pilot. You were the lead pilot for the filming of the movie with Tom Cruise behind you.
Well, what the Navy did an awesome job of was finding a lot of people who were experts in their field. And so there's no chance I'd say that I was the lead pilot for it. I flew some of the scenes that seemed to have gotten the most attention, but some of the most challenging scenes were the dogfighting scenes. And they used a bunch of Top Gun instructors, specifically the individual who was the dogfighting SME, the subject matter expert, who flew with Tom on some of those scenes early in the movie during training. And then, for example, when we took all the airplanes out to the aircraft carrier to film those scenes, Tom flew on it. He launched and landed aboard an aircraft carrier, and we used the instructors at our fleet replacement squadron to fly with him. I was involved almost exclusively because of my time flying low altitude with the Blue Angels. And Tom was insistent that a few of these scenes had an airplane at 10 or 20 feet off the ground. Traditionally, we don't fly that low. If you're in a Navy F-18 squadron, the lowest you almost ever fly when you're at a tactical airspeed is 200 feet. So you wouldn't do what you're showing right there. That's atypical. And there's nothing hard about it. I mean, to fly level is about as simple as it gets, but to fly level at a low altitude with very small room for error, and to have, at this point, the altimeters don't matter, because at a certain speed, the altimeters induce error. The rad-out can be inaccurate. So it becomes an eyeball calibration sort of thing. And on the Blue Angels, we do it so much that I just had a good deal of experience. And once again, anybody could have done it. I just was kind of the risk mitigated option to do it because of the years I'd spent flying. So that's an example. That film, or that scene right there, was what became the Dark Star takeoff, where they use this Mach 10 airplane and it takes off and it dusts the Admiral, who's played by Ed Harris. And to set that up, we just did this really low altitude takeoff and low altitude pass and a high performance climb. But that's the Blue Angel number 6 takeoff maneuver. And I had flown that maneuver hundreds, maybe thousands of times. And so to have someone who's done that so many times, it's like, okay, well, it probably is going to go well. This person's been able to fly this and debrief this over and over and over again. And so that was my involvement, was these low passes, the inverted stuff. We filmed the scene that they did in the first movie where there was an airplane inverted, an airplane right side up, and we filmed that for real. We did it with an L-39 filming it next to us. I'm inverted, and then the commanding officer of Top Gun was right side up alongside me. So some of the Paramount did an awesome job. They wanted everything to be real. They wanted, if you see an airplane, if you're seeing something on the big screen, it was filmed by an airplane in the air of other airplanes. And like this scene, for example, that's running through the canyon. Tom and I flew. There's halfway through the movie, the character borrows or steals this airplane to prove that you can go through this canyon in a certain amount of time. And Tom and I flew this. It probably took about 2 minutes and however many seconds. And we just flew it over and over and over again, multiple days and sorties in a row.
How do you get picked for this?
Well, I mean, probably story of my life. I was just the only one available, I think, at the time. They needed a Blue Angel because the airplanes at low altitude. The Blue Angels who were on the Blue Angels were flying air shows, so they couldn't go away for weeks at a time to film. And they really needed someone who had experience in the Super Hornet, and that was my job in the moment, was transitioning us from a legacy F-18 squadron to a Super Hornet squadron. So I'm in a position where I have plenty of available time. I'm familiar with the new airplane. I've got lots of years under my belt flying with Blue Angels for air shows. So I don't know that there was anybody. If they had another person that had the same amount of experience, they'd have probably picked him.
Right place, right time.
Totally.
So I'm sure this question would come up, but can you explain the camera work with Tom Cruise making it look like he's piloting? Is he actually in the second seat? And then there's a camera, and he's pretending to move the stick and stuff, or how did that, if you can share that stuff?
That's a great question. We had 2 airplanes that were painted up in the Top Gun colors. One was a single seat and one was a 2-seat. And then the 2-seat airplane had the entire back of it. Normally, if you're the Wizzo in the back seat, the weapons systems officer, you were looking at various screens that tell you, the airborne radar or your navigation or your radios or that sort of thing. Most of that was removed, and there were just these ultra high def IMAX cameras. And not only were they there, like it filled the entire back seat. So traditionally, the person in the back has a little bit of visibility. Let's call it from like the chest or shoulders up through the canopy. You can see forward. You want to be able to, if you're in a dogfight, you want to help the pilot and tell them, where you can see the enemy aircraft or that sort of thing. But the whole airplane was covered in cameras. And whether I'm not smart enough to know what the angle of these lenses are, but it really truly does make it look like the person in the back seat is in the front seat. And so, the actors flew for hundreds of hours in the F-18s. And it's a really crucial aspect of this is that, the actors can act in the sense they can run through their lines and they can go through the right emotions, but they can't act like they're under 7 Gs. There's no, I don't care who you are. You can't pretend that your body is being crushed by an elephant in your seat. You just can't, and you can't contort your face in that way. But you can act while you're under 7 Gs. And so that's what they did. And they were super good sports about it. Not only were they acting at 7 or 8 Gs, 7 times the force of gravity on their body, but they're also inverted. They can't see forward. They're directing the pilots around because they can see the cameras and what the lighting looks like. So they know what the best shot's going to be. So they're driving around the pilots to some degree. They're also their own hair and makeup stylists. They're having to fix themselves constantly. So it was I think for them, it was a really unique acting role because they were totally by themselves. And if they didn't do the job right and they came back and Paramount say, you just wasted $20,000 in an F-18 and you didn't do what we needed you to do. So I think there was some pressure on them to get it right the first time.
That was going to be one of my questions, though. It's like, so every time one of these F-18s takes to the sky, what's the cost? What's the cost for an F-18 to take off?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. And here's the reason. I fly Gulfstreams, and we can tell you for sure what the cost per hour is, because what your crew salary is, what your hangar fees are, what the fuel costs, maintenance costs, all that, insurance. You figure out your fixed and your operating costs easy. The Navy, it's not so easy. And the reason is we don't pay hangar fees. We don't pay crew salary. We don't pay insurance. There's not an easy way to break down some of those costs. What we can figure out is what the cost of the fuel is and what the cost of the basic maintenance would be, the consumables might be. Okay. And I believe there was a number that the Navy came up with for Paramount. My rough guess is it's around $13,000 per flight hour. And that only covers the gas and perhaps the oil. You know what I mean?
Per flight hour.
Per flight hour. Yeah.
Wow.
But once again, that's a bargain for what we're actually paying.
How so?
Well, because they're not paying the crew who's flying it. They're not paying the mechanics who are fixing it. They're not paying the base for letting. If I brought a Gulfstream and landed in Scottsdale, I pay that airport fees. I pay the FBO that catches my plane fees. They weren't paying any of those fees.
So you're saying the movie studio got a bargain?
In that sense, they only the agreement we had, the Navy and Paramount had, as I understand it, was that it was a zero-sum deal. The Navy couldn't profit off it, and Paramount couldn't not pay what they. It was a zero-sum situation. So the Navy didn't lose money, and in turn, what we got was a 2-hour advertisement.
Yeah, because that was the beauty of the original Top Gun. They looked at it as, all right, and I remember reading. I can't remember what book it was. This was years ago before Top Gun Maverick came out, but they looked at it, or there was a huge argument. It's like, why are we doing this? Why would we want to do this? And then there was a contingent within the Navy that said, are you kidding me? Why wouldn't we do this? And it was a really unorthodox recruiting tool that just, blew away anyone's expectations when it came to recruitment numbers after Top Gun, the original Top Gun came out.
Totally. And I personally, I've said earlier, I wanted to be a SEAL, so it didn't necessarily have that same effect on me. However, what's really cool in my mind is that I can think of a lot of long nights over Iraq or Afghanistan where I was flying with someone who is an exceptional pilot, who in some cases saved my life or taught me everything I ever learned about being a fighter pilot. And in almost all of those cases, those individuals signed up and served and became incredible aviators because they saw Top Gun in 1986, and that motivated them and redirected the course of their lives. And so it has the same effect as the Blue Angels. I'm on these air shows, and I just say, if I can find one young man or one young lady who we can redirect their life to do something meaningful for the country, well, then we've done our job as a team. And if that movie changes the course of someone's life and hopefully thousands or millions of people's lives, well, that's a huge win. You can't overstate the impact that it has of being a really exceptional movie and being so pro-military and America and done properly. It's just awesome.
Not combat, but with the Blue Angels or any of the filming that you've done for the movie Top Gun Maverick, any nightmares?
No, I haven't. I've been in some unsettling situations in airplanes for sure, but I don't have any PTSD from flying airplanes around. I think you're so used to things going wrong. If there is such a thing, the challenge I have now is whether, I own 2 airplanes, live in an airport. I fly Gulfstreams. I fly a variety of other airplanes too. And when I'm in the airplane, I'm really fixated on what's happening in the moment. I don't relax well in an airplane that I'm flying. And if I'm in a Gulfstream for 12 hours over the ocean, nothing happens. The airplane's so well built, you can just push a button and the thing does all the work itself. And it's super reliable. But I stare at stuff way too much because I'm used to in the F-18. If you look away for a second, oh my God, you're out of position, you're off altitude, you're off airspeed. Something's probably broken since you looked away. And so you're used to things going wrong a lot. So you're kind of just not a nervous flyer, you're an unsettled, or you're just a very active member of that evolution, I guess.
Mm-hmm. As such an experienced pilot, if you're flying commercial back of the plane, how are you? How are you sitting there? Are you itchy?
No, I usually just get a chuckle if we land hard, of course, because that's typically me doing that as well. No, I don't think I'm not a nervous flyer. You get used to the things that make other people unsettled. If you hit turbulence, it's a non-event. People don't die from turbulence. If you're not strapped in or seatbelted, then sure, something bad can happen. But the airplane's going to be totally fine. And I can sometimes tell if you've flown under a really heavy aircraft because it's very different than the feeling of turbulence. But in general, I'd always rather be flying. For sure, if I'm going to go meet a Gulfstream somewhere to fly it, I'd rather be in an airplane doing the work to get there than sitting and letting someone else fly it. But such is life.
Yeah. Good question, John. Although, you'll probably be happy to know that you're actually talking to someone, that I have over 300 flight hours in a Piper Cherokee. Nice. So if you have any advice that you'd like to ask me, don't hesitate to interrupt, and I'd be happy to help you out any way I can. You talk about hard landings and everything, but that's what a Hornet's built for, right? It's built to basically collide with a carrier deck.
Interestingly, yeah, it sure is. We land at 720 feet per minute. And I was coming back from an air show in Baltimore with the team. I had just returned back after the mishap. I was number 6. We had flown Sunday night. We were right at the limits of the airplane's fuel in terms of, otherwise we'd have to stop for gas along the way. And that's never an ideal thing to do because one of the airplanes might not start up again. And now you have to send a rescue jet to go fix the airplane. So we're landing essentially at our absolute minimum fuel. It's nighttime. Our families are there waiting to catch us. I'm the last guy, so I land. I'm number 6, and the minute I touch down, the right landing gear just kind of dips, and that's for all the mishaps, emergencies I'd been a part of and experienced. That was one I had, and that's called a planing link failure. We talk about it all the time. We brief to it. We know it can happen, but the link that holds the gear rigid and in place just gave way, and so the gear doesn't ever it doesn't lock into position, and so it settles. So the only procedure is you just go around as fast as you can. You go to full power afterward. You take back off. And I did that, but now the gear, I had no right landing gear. And so it's the tricky position because at some point you might find yourself forced to just have to do a controlled ejection, because if you have no nose gear, you can land fine, the nose lands, but the 2 main gears support you. If you have no 2 main gear, you can land just on the belly with the nose gear. But if you have only 1 main gear, you run into a case where the airplane might start to cartwheel down the runway. And so you have to take an arrested landing. And so, and I'll belabor, I won't go through the whole story. I obviously survived and the airplane didn't, but, we were able to land, and there's damage to an airplane when it lands without 1 main gear like that. But what they found out later in the kind of investigation is the airplane actually, that one didn't have some additional engineering event that it was supposed to have to strengthen that planing link, but it really needed to land even harder than I landed. And if you land hard, it kind of locks it into position. And if you try to land soft because it's nighttime and you're the last person and so on and so forth, then it can actually be negative to the aircraft because it landed too soft.
Interesting.
Wow.
Which I thought was wild. That's probably true only of the F-18 and other carrier airplanes, but it was the case for that one.
You had 500 carrier, it looks like here, 500 carrier arrested landings. Mm-hmm. What carriers?
My longest deployments were on the TR, the Theodore Roosevelt, and the John C. Stennis. So the great majority of those traveled with those. And then we would do smaller detachments where you might do 5, 10, 20 landings. I think I've landed on just about every carrier, but my deployments were on those too.
Ever land on the Truman?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The reason I ask is, what were your thoughts on I think it was the Truman earlier this year had, I think, what was it, 2 planes that go overboard?
No, they lost
3.
1. Yeah, because one got shot down by their own escort, and then I think they lost 2 over the side.
Yeah. So when you hear about stuff like that in the news, mishaps like that, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's funny you say that. When the third one went down, I came up to my computer and wrote an op-ed that I never sent to anybody, but kind of called The Predictable Crisis for Naval Aviation. But the first one was, and those reports, the timing of this question is interesting because the reports have just come out this week. And now I think most of us who are still plugged in with naval aviation have probably heard everything ahead of time. But the shoot down was a wild story for too many reasons to talk about here over the next week even. I mean, the sequence of events that led to us shooting our own airplane down. To my knowledge, that the last time that happened was over Iraq when an Army land group of Patriot missiles fired on a Navy F-18 coming home from a combat mission and shot down that F-18 and killed the aircrew. But I don't think, to my knowledge, we haven't actually shot down another one since then. But it was a wild sequence of events that led to it, and almost led to a second one being shot down. That seems to be lesser known, is that the second airplane was, a small distance, 20, 30, 50 feet away from being shot down also after they shut off the fusing to that second SM-2. So that's wild. But then, they were having to take evasive actions apparently, and that's why the airplane on the elevator fell off. And then the final one was and that actually happened third, I believe. But then the catapult mishap, or the arresting gear mishap, was the middle one where the airplane lands and the arresting gear is not rigged correctly. So it, I guess the wire parted. So, and then of course that same carrier had a collision at sea and the commanding officer was fired.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
that's right.
In my mind, that's like World War II levels of damages and mishaps. And from what I understand, those, both the air crew, the air wing, that is, and the ship was placed in a really, really challenging position, very close to enemy forces and to surf stair sites. And I wasn't part of that deployment, so I can't speak intelligently on it, but it will go down in naval aviation history and lore as a really incredible combat deployment for them.
I was just reading now they also lost one of their tractors as well.
Yeah, the tow tractor was attached to the aircraft carrier on the elevator, and they both went overboard. And I think the sailors that either were in the airplane and on the tractor were lucky to not go with it.
Jeez. How many aircraft have you damaged?
Oof. Well, I'd like to say the aircraft damaged themselves. But, plenty, I'm sure. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've lost engines, but the airplanes were generally recoverable in that case. They were recovered. The landing mishap I mentioned a moment ago, that airplane I don't think flew again. But I've had a number of mishaps over the years. It caught fire at air shows, and we fly these things really hard. If I were to give an example, I'd say, because I'm in general contracting construction, when you put hurricane clips on houses on our roofs and you build homes in such a way that they can withstand a hurricane. But that's supposed to be one hurricane in the lifetime of that house. It's not a hurricane every day. And we engineer this airplane to withstand the equivalent of a hurricane, to withstand a really intense flight and high G forces, high speeds, this and that. But they don't expect it to do this every single flight. And the Blue Angel Air Show is a really intense event. I mean, we have cases where if you look at the chart that shows what they expected the F-18 to do, it said we expected this airplane to push -3 Gs one time or 0 times every 10,000 flight hours. And we do it probably 3 to 6 times per flight hour. It's on an order of magnitude different. And we pull 7 Gs, instead of once per flight hour, it's 50 times per flight hour or something like that. Mm-hmm. So we're putting these airplanes through a lot of stress that they don't normally experience. And because of that, they just are more prone to having issues.
If you're just joining us, we're thrilled to be talking to author Frank Weisser, U.S. Naval Commander Frank Weisser. Thanks, Connor, for pulling that up. Author of the book Lead Solo, talking to us tonight about his experience flying the F/A-18 Hornet over Afghanistan, Iraq, 2 tours with the Blue Angels, and then, of course, more notably, or to a lot of us anyway, being one of the pilots for the movie Top Gun Maverick. And I mean, all fascinating stories. I want to, before we let you go, and you've been really generous with your time, I really appreciate it. But like I said at the start, you provided a ton of images that I think are just great. And I want to pull up a couple more. You can't leave until
no problem.
So yeah, obviously you spend a lot of time, with the public and, their photo shoots and all this stuff. But I mean, how many times did, they hand you some strange baby and then have you stand next to a model? So does this happen a lot? Huh? I mean,
that is a strange baby. That very strange baby happens to be an 18-year-old getting ready to leave for college soon. And,
oh, really?
And, interestingly, if I can brag on my own kids for a second, I bought a little Cessna 172 this summer, not because I want my kids to be pilots, but I wanted, at least for my daughter, I wanted her to be empowered to know that she could solo an airplane, as she goes off to start her life as a painter and artist and fashion designer. And so I got this airplane, and my son's taking lessons too, as kind of a tiebreaker, something to make him unique as he applies to colleges. And they've both really taken to it and they love it. But my daughter is just out of her mind. She has made comments over the last few months, like, there's nothing I'd rather be doing than flying right now. And so she had, she left school today, finished her lacrosse practice, and then down to the airport to do ground school and a flight lesson tomorrow, and then one on Saturday. And at dinner tonight, she said, would you mind if I flew on Sunday too? And so it's really cool to see. And here's the thing that is interesting for me. I got to speak at an AOPA, which is the pilot.
Oh, AOPA, sure, yeah.
They had a STEM event a couple weeks ago up in Indianapolis. They do annually, and it was for all their educators. And these educators have the opportunity to teach aviation in a variety of different ways. And so I closed it with the idea that, our family, my daughter was born as what we call PCS, as we moved from Virginia Beach to Pensacola. We stopped halfway on the move. It's a 2-day drive. We stopped in Atlanta where our families were, and my wife had our daughter at the hospital that she was born in. And I left the next day and went and checked in with the Blue Angels, and my daughter, moved down a week later. And so then for the next year, she was our only child, and she flew like 70 or 80 times before she was 1. She was on my wife's lap, going to air show after air show after air show to just spend time together as a family, and then did that for the next 3 years. And so they grew up at Blue Angel air shows, and then we spent time when I was on deployment, and then more Blue Angel stuff. And then we live at an airport and we fly in our airplanes. And to say that kids have, I don't know that 2 or 3 kids could have been more exposed to aviation, yet none of them had ever asked to learn how to fly. And it was me saying, I'm buying an airplane. I want you guys to do it. This is just so I know that you have the confidence. And oh, by the way, if I decide to keel over one day and our family's flying, it'd be nice for one of them to push me out of the way and land the thing. So it's selfish in that regard on my side. But the idea that they hadn't asked to do it, I gave them this opportunity and they love it. And so that's what I was sharing with these STEM educators is like, they had this really cool opportunity. The kids might not even know they want to do it, but if you open the door and give them a nudge, it might change their life. And it certainly has for my daughter, who now doesn't want to design fashion and paint. She wants to be a pilot. And I'm like, let's see if you can do both. We certainly can do both. But aviation just has such a cool aspect. Here I am. I can talk about it all night long. And as I said an hour ago, I didn't even want to do it. I sobbed for a week when I found out I was going to fly. And then within, minutes of being airborne for the first time in the Navy, I just thought, this is the coolest damn thing in the whole world. And you know this from the Piper. It doesn't matter what, that's the truth about aviation. Whatever you're flying is the best airplane in the whole world. And I've got this awesome picture, and that sits in my hangar, of the Blue Angel number 5 jet with its nose to a J3 Piper Cub, which just that morning I had gotten my tail dragger endorsement in the show in Traverse City, Michigan. And to me, it's like these two opposites. It was like, this is the most incredible civilian airplane ever, where you have to put your foot on the tire and hand crank it, and the thing has 65 horsepower. And then this F-18 that can go 1.8 times the speed of sound and 50,000 feet per minute in the climb. And they're totally opposites, but they're each incredibly fun for their own reasons to fly.
Yeah, if you go to Oshkosh, you will see jet pilots. Pilots that fly some pretty incredible airplanes gathered around pilots. Well, you mentioned a J3 Cub, you'll see them, just lined up to ask those guys questions. What's it like to fly, what could arguably one of the slowest airplanes around, right? And they just want to know. So it's really interesting to see that dynamic.
We had
any of your
close friend of ours,
your
Blue Angels, and mine flying air shows. A guy named Sean Tucker, and Sean's been kind of the hero of the air show circuit for years and years and years, and flew for One Air Collect and then Oracle. And he had a J3 out in California when we lived there, and we could go fly that thing. And it's on the California coast, and you could just throw out a roll of toilet paper and then basically kind of dive bomb that toilet paper, where you're just up and down only a couple hundred feet, but it's in that moment, it's the most fun thing in the entire world. It's better than skydiving and scuba diving and wingsuit flying and all. And you're in a J3 Cub, and it's just so much dang fun.
Shane, you were going to ask a question.
Yeah. Do any of your children plan on following in your footsteps? The Naval Academy, anything like that? Or
I don't know. I'm certainly not forcing it. I'd rather our kids choose their own course.
Understood.
The military, unfortunately, like a lot of careers, whether it's teaching or the fire department or you name it, it can become a bit incestuous, and the families, almost everyone I served with, their parents were in the military and that sort of thing. I'd rather see, I actually spoke at the Georgia Farm Bureau the other day, and they were talking about that in agriculture, that it was a really interesting statistic that in ag, when our country was founded 250 years ago, 90% of Americans grew their own food and were farmers. They consider themselves farmers. And now fast forward 250 years, 1% of America farms. And what a distance there is from your average everyday farmer to the real world. And I got up there and said, I feel the same way about the military. There's a big disconnect between, you can go to certain pockets in our country and you can talk to people who won't even know someone who's in the military. And so I would rather see those pockets serve for the next generation, and pockets in the South or in Texas do something totally different. So that's a long road to a short house again, but I'm great. I'm going to support my kids. To be a fighter pilot dad and have a daughter say she wants to be a painter is not really what you have in mind, but you find ways to encourage and empower your kids however you can.
with the life you've had, being in the military, Blue Angels, you're still the parent of teenagers. So recently, when's the last time you embarrassed your kids?
I do. Well, I work really hard to do that daily,
I
actually.
mean, do you get eye rolls? It's like, oh, that dad,
Yeah, it's an impossible challenge to stay up on the teen slang, which seems to change every 30 seconds. But to the degree that I can, I'm happy to do so. Our youngest has her little, group chats of get ready with me and their hauls and whatnot. So I'll generally do like an adult haul where I'll open like a bag of like Orvis flies or a fishing rod or something and get really excited about my haul for the day, or a jersey of a sports team or something like that. So I don't. It's hard sometimes to interact with teenage kids, but I guess if you're not embarrassing them, you're not trying.
Yeah, right. And then this picture here, what was it like? I'll let you tell this story.
That's a fun picture. So that's the first time we watched Top Gun Maverick.
So if you guys see in the background, they're in a drive-in movie and the Top Gun Maverick's about to start on the screen. You're there. What? Okay, I'm sorry. I totally interrupted. I didn't let you, but I think this is the coolest picture ever. You're at a drive-in. People are there to see Top Gun Maverick, and they have no idea who's there watching the movie with them.
Yeah, it was super. That was a really fun night, actually. That's a lifetime memory. Now, my wife and I had the privilege of being invited to the premiere, so we got to be there, and there was only a handful of Navy folks. There's probably 10 Navy people out of 600 there. So I had seen it once, but then that was the night the movie came out. And we live in a really small town in North Georgia that the whole county has 20,000 people in it. Our town maybe has 5,000. And we don't have a theater. The closest theater is probably a 45-minute drive, but we do have a drive-in. And so we went to the drive-in that night and saw it. I mean, it's our town, so we love it. Top Gun Maverick, you need to experience. So you lose a little bit with the sound. If you went, we saw it a week or two later with other friends at an IMAX, and that's of course the way to see that movie. But yeah, it was a really fun night. The kids hadn't seen it before, of course, and so we watched it together in the grass.
Very nice.
And were you the cool dad or the cool husband at that point, or?
No, I don't think so. There's almost nothing I can do to impress my kids. They're wholly unimpressed with me, but that's okay. I don't care. There's a Mark Twain quote, something about like the young son at 14 couldn't believe how stupid his father was, and 10 years later he couldn't believe how much he'd learned in such a short period of time.
Yeah,
maybe I'm counting on it. We'll see.
Frank, before we let you go, I want to give John, Connor, and Shane, one last time to hit you with questions. Go ahead, guys.
Is there any plane, military or civilian, that you would love to fly that you haven't had the opportunity to?
Good question.
A bunch. The F4, the Corsair for sure. Absolutely. The P-51.
Wait. When you say Corsair, you got to qualify that. Are you talking about the F4U, the World War II era?
F4U, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not talking about like the other
Vietnam War era one.
Yeah. You're not talking about that. The Phantom.
F4U for sure.
Okay.
P-51 unquestionably. I would have loved to have flown the A4. I didn't. I showed up to flight school right after they stopped flying that one. That was the Blue Angels had that for 10 years. I've heard only awesome things about that airplane too. So those would be the ones from, if I were to look in the rearview mirror, the ones that I feel sad for having missed.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you have two planes?
So I have a Baron. I have a Baron, and then we bought a 172 for the kids.
Oh, you got a Baron. Okay. Wait, twin engine or the single six-seater?
Some will call it like a twin Bonanza. I have a Baron 58, so it's a twin engine airplane, 6 seats total.
Gotcha.
Super cool airplane.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, I'll tell you a fun story that you might appreciate. I'd done, my wife and I had been married for my entire military experience. And so deployments out of Virginia Beach, 3 years with the Blue Angels, 3 more years flying combat missions from Lemoore, California. One of our close friends lived in California and had a Baron and started an aviation company in that Baron that now is, manages hundreds and hundreds of private jets and an incredibly successful company. And he asked if we could spend a weekend with him before we moved over to Germany for my next job. And we were pretty pressed for time, and it was getting hectic. And he's like, I'll come down and grab you in the plane. We'll bring you up just tonight. And so he bops down in the Baron, and it was, instead of being a 3 or 4 hour drive, it was a 30-minute flight. It was very convenient. So our family piles into his Baron, and we fly up 30 minutes away to this other airport where the ranch was. And we were all in headsets, and I'm sitting up front with my bud, and I did comm nav. The right seat guy usually does the radios and the navigation and whatnot. And we land. My wife climbs out, and we're unpacking all our stuff. And she goes, "Did I hear you talking?" And I said, "Probably. Were you listening?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, and she goes, "And they were telling you to do stuff, and you were just doing it?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "How did you know to do that?" And I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You're a badass." And I thought she was trolling.
It's perfect.
Like, "Are you messing with me right now?" And she goes, "No, I didn't know you knew how to do that." And I go, "You've watched me 50 feet off the runway at 600 knots upside down in formation. And I impressed you because I changed the squawk in the Baron?" Well, if only I knew that didn't take much to impress in aviation. Who knew?
So she was impressed that ATC gave you a squawk code to put in the transponder.
Bingo. Very impressed, actually. More impressed with that than anything I'd done up to that point, which included, like I said, hundreds of deployments or traps and deployments. And I thought, all right, well, so anyway, I bought a Baron. That keeps her impressed.
Yeah, I would have if you didn't have a Baron, I would have gone out the very next day and bought one if that got her going.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or at least told her that you were going to go start shopping for one. John Epp, questions?
No more questions, but thank you so much for being here. It's been a
yes, sir.
blast.
Yeah. You've been real generous with your time.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, it's such a pleasure.
What's the story about the pilot on the first date when he's halfway through dinner? He's like, "All right, enough about airplanes. Let's talk about me." You've allowed me to tell stories and share our family's history, so I'm grateful for that.
You know what? I'm sorry. There is one more photo I want to show you. That.
Oh yeah.
This to me looks impossible.
That's awesome.
Because I think that's either a wildcat or a hellcat in the foreground.
That's a hellcat.
Then a bearcat. Is that a bearcat in the middle?
I think it might be. I need to zoom in on my computer, but my memory of the flight was that. Yeah, we did that in the intro.
Yeah, that's a Hellcat, Bearcat, and the F-18.
Which the reason that's done is because those were the first 2 Blue Angel airplanes.
Right.
Oh, okay. So it must have been a sheer impossibility. Are you the pilot in this picture by any chance?
I'm flying the Blue Angel airplane. Yep, not the tail draggers. Those take more skill than I have. But the photo plane actually? This was shot from a guy named Glenn Watson through a gun turret out of a B-24. Is my memory.
Whoa!
Really, really cool deal. Super cool deal. That was over the Salton Sea in southwestern California. It was an out of this world epic night. I have so many fun pictures from that evening.
So you're in formation. You're in formation with a Bearcat. Correct me if I'm wrong. A Hellcat.
Yep.
And a B-24.
Yeah, who's leading it? That's right.
How are you not stalling out?
Yeah, how are you not stalling on this?
I can't see close enough here. Maybe so sometimes we'd put our flaps down to half, which would give us a lower flight deck angle and make us. But those airplanes are pretty fast, actually. Mm-hmm. I would bet they can do 250, 300 knots. And we routinely would fly in formation with our airshow friends at 145, 150 knots.
Oh, no kidding.
Too steep of a deck angle. The Hornet we put on its tail at about 115 knots. But that's on its tail. That's not great for formation. But if you put the flaps down, you can easily fly a fairly controlled position at 150. But I'm quite sure we were faster than that.
Okay. Well, that explains it because you look at this picture. It's like, well, you're not pitched up. You're not nose up. I don't see flaps. And it's like, how is this possible? Then immediately you go, oh, it must be AI generated.
Exactly.
But AI always screws up the insignia on so many planes. It's like, no, this is a real shot.
Yeah, that was 2017. That was long before AI had taken hold like it has today.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh. Well,
yeah, I look at this and I kind of wish I could see the wide shot with the B-24
I know. Tell me
as
about
well. I love the B-24. It's
it. Was it a
it's
B-24 or B-25?
I'd have to go back and look. I haven't looked at that for almost 10 years. I'll send you some pictures after we wrap up here, and you can, you can put them back in later if it makes more sense. But truthfully, I don't remember. But I just remember it being just this out of this world. It's one of those moments where you say, I can't believe I'm doing this. We had a similar one when we flew with Doc that same season.
Oh, yeah.
7 months later, we it was at the Oshkosh Air Show. It was one of only 2 flying B-29s, and I have a massive picture in our hangar blown up of that because it looks like we're over the Pacific. It looks like, what was that movie? The Final Countdown, where the carrier went back in time.
Right. I was going to say that
to
about
me.
this photo. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
because
and you have to you're just going to zoom right by him.
Totally. Well, we in this picture we had 2 F-18s basically providing cover, or underneath this B-29, shot from a Bonanza through a hole in the bottom of the Bonanza, so it gets a direct shot looking down rather than a side shot. And it's over the lake that's adjacent to Oshkosh, but it looked like just the dark blue of the water. It looked like the Pacific, and it just felt like Final Countdown. Like, oh my God, these airplanes went back in time to save Americans.
I had the opportunity about 3 years ago to watch the Final Countdown again with a crew member who had just finished a deployment on Nimitz, and the entire movie was just him looking, okay, they've changed that. That's no longer green. Like, that's literally all he did the entire film. And then any time where you could tell it was a set, he would just go off, and it was like, oh, that's a set. That's not the real thing.
Frank, do you have a favorite movie, real quick?
Good one.
Gosh, I have lots. I talk about one in the movie or in the book.
I guess the Notebook.
I love For the Love of the Game as a baseball movie, and it talks. I use a reference for focus because Costner's character, just clear the mechanism and the world gets quiet.
Yeah.
So, and then Field of Dreams. I'm not a baseball total buff, but I love the sport, and so I like both those. And then my childhood favorite movie was Braveheart. I love that movie and actually, I wanted to go to Scotland my entire adult life, and then we finally went over there when I was working for NATO, and that's hard living over there. Scotland was one of the more challenging places I ever visited because it's like every 15 minutes the conditions change so drastically that you're just basically uncomfortable for the entire time you're there, and those people are born again hard.
Wow.
But yeah, I absolutely love Braveheart as a kid.
Well, if you like baseball, you didn't mention The Natural.
The Natural's awesome too. The Natural, yeah, that's another classic, of course.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up I want to mention we've mentioned it a couple times already, but I want to mention Frank Weisser, author of Lead Solo. Connor, thanks for pulling that up. So this was brought to us through the U.S. Naval Institute Press, as Shane likes to call it, the Year of the Author, and we're honored to have Frank join us tonight. Tell us the stories of not only his combat experience as a Blue Angel pilot, but then also as a pilot for the movie Top Gun Maverick. Frank, it's been great. Like I said, you've been real generous with your time. We've had you on for over an hour and a half. All I can say is thank you.
No, it's super fun talking to you guys. I appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for those of you interested in Frank's book, Lead Solo, in the link in the video description below, actually you'll see 2 links. One that'll take you directly to the U.S. Naval Institute Press, and then one will take you to Amazon. Both of those sites will get you to Frank's book. And Frank, one more time, what was the charity that the book benefits?
It benefits the Wingman Foundation.
The Wingman Foundation. So keep that in mind when you're clicking. Buy Frank's book, support the Wingman Foundation. Again, Frank, thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening in Georgia.
All right. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks
All
so
right,
much, Frank.
Now we're going to kick you off and talk behind your back.
Yep.
Right on.
It's been great having you. Thanks.
All right.
Merry
See y'all.
Christmas. That was fantastic.
Boy, that guy was annoying. I mean, all these great stories. How do you pick one? Oh man. And the images that he sent were just outstanding.
Indeed.
What a thrill to have Frank. So again, I just want to repeat, if you guys are interested in learning more about Frank's story, click on the links in the video description below, and that'll take you either to the U.S. Naval Institute Press, their website, directly to his book, Lead Solo, or to Amazon, and you can get more of his story that way. So it was definitely got to thank the U.S. Naval Institute Press, Jack over at the U.S. Naval Institute Press. for setting that one up.
Yeah, we had a couple of months where, there's just there's a changeover at the Naval Institute Press.
Sorry, Shane, I was stumbling over it too. Yeah, don't worry about it.
And so Jack picked up and we re-engaged with Frank. Next month we have Tom Cutler. Give me a fast ship, right? About the USS Johnston.
Yep.
Okay, so that's next.
And so we'll be having him in January, but I want to plug that now in case you want to do like a, for Christmas or something. So Tom Cutler about the USS Johnston. So he'll be our guest next in January.
Mm-hmm.
It will be on a Thursday, though. Let's make that clear. Thursday, the 15th of January.
Right.
Let's see here. Yeah, and you know what? I do have that link. I'm sorry. I do have that. Yeah, I do have that link already set up. I'll change the date for that so it shows up.
Well, I changed it at the Naval Parks one.
Okay. And I want to apologize to the fans of the viewers of the Buffalo Naval Park. For some reason, the live stream on the Buffalo Naval Park YouTube channel was deleted from their end.
Hold on. Totally. So what I noticed was, and I was going to do this offline, but I also apologize for that. What I noticed, Ken, when you set this up, it populated 2 videos, identical.
Yep.
So I deleted one of them because I'm like, why do I need 2? So I went to your channel while this was going on, and you had both videos playing. That's never happened. But why were there 2 links to this particular video?
So what's happening now with StreamYard is they are giving us the option to stream this horizontally, like we always have for the last several years. We've been doing this. You stream it horizontally, or to have a customized stream vertically that will make it more friendly to those watching on their phones.
So I have to keep. So my mistake was I deleted one of them, which probably prevented the other one from playing.
Most likely, but I will get you the video file so you can repost it on the Buffalo Naval Park.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So,
thanks so much. So I do apologize about that.
Yeah. But I think in the future, and for those of you still watching, submit in the comments. If you watch on your iPhone or on your smartphone, throw it in the comments. Let us know. I'm actually tempted to say, let's just go horizontally. And if most of you are watching on your smart TV, on your laptop, on your tablet, whatever, that may be what you prefer. It wouldn't impact you at all. But for those of you that are watching on your smartphones vertically, throw a message in the comments. Let me know. And then the next time an episode of Museum Ship Mafia comes up, we may still keep it in both formats. StreamYard has made a lot of changes over the last 6 weeks, and that was one of them.
So, okay. So it was John, you obviously didn't delete both. Like did you know what was going on with that, or?
No, but I noticed there's 2 going, and you can see there's a mobile icon next to one of them.
Oh, yeah, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I'm going.
Okay. So I said, he's uploaded it
both.
Twice. Let me just delete one of them for lack, to stop confusion or something like that, or a duplication. So when I deleted one, it must have done something to the other. Then I just deleted it now because I was extremely frustrated that it wasn't playing. So
yeah. So let's see. Legit Car 17. He let's see. He listens at work. He doesn't care. James at All American Travels. I always watch these on TV. Let's see.
So horizontal is good.
I think we're going to go with horizontal.
That seems to be the norm.
That's what we've always done.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's good.
Let's move on to see what's going on in the world of the Buffalo Naval. Oh, wait.
No, that's all right. Look at that. Yeah, I love that snow shot there.
Yeah. Shane Stevenson, curator at the Buffalo and Erie County Naval and Military Park. Check out the YouTube channel. Search for Buffalo Naval Park, or check out the website, buffalonavalpark.org.
Who does not have even 1 hour of flight time in any plane? So yeah,
you've been a passenger. You flew out
I've been
to
passengers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, that's something to be proud of.
I've flown. Yes, I love it.
Yeah,
I've flown.
good for you.
Our big thing now is at the Naval Park is that we are open on the weekends and wintertime, which is something that we've attempted in the past, and we're really keeping the pedal to the metal for this winter, and we're going to see how it goes. So we give guided tours of only the Little Rock at 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, and 1:30 Saturdays and Sundays. So they're going great so far. We've done it for the past 2 weekends. And then we'll see how it continues through the holidays and then into January, February, and then into late March when we actually then just fully open again for our season, so to speak. So that's the big thing that we're doing now at the Naval Park.
How's that working out for you guys?
Yeah, it's working out great. I think we've had maybe 80 or 90 people over the past 4 days, let's say, a Saturday,
wow.
Saturday, Sunday. And that's just kind of off the top of my head. Yeah, maybe 80 or 90 people that have come. So it's kind of Buffalo's a town that you're kind of tied to events, right? If there's other things going on, you're going to get people. But at this time of year, it's why it's important to kind of try and tie it in with if there's an event down at the arena or, there's ice skating downtown as well. So kind of making sure that we're kind of pairing it with other events that might be going on. I'm looking forward to tours in January and February. Now they're all guided. All right. So they're not individual. And again, it's only of the Little Rock. And so that's where mostly we are. We have a new president, CEO, and so he's brought a lot of new ideas and a lot of new energy to the Naval Park. And so we'll be implementing some of those things over the next 6 or 8 months. And then, of course, talking about the dry dock and making sure we're kind of on schedule for that. So a lot of stuff going on.
Is the new president bringing a different vibe to the Naval Park?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. He came to us via Dallas, and he managed a large green space down there, like a park system that had a lot of events and things going on there. He also has a lot of experience. He worked at the Queen Mary for a while, so he's bringing a lot of love of historic sites and things like that. So
cool. All right. Buffalo Naval Park. Check them out. Check out the website, buffalonavalpark.org. Or like I said a few moments ago, the YouTube channel, search for Buffalo Naval Park in the search bar. It'll come right up and you'll see all kinds of videos that Shane has a major hand in producing. So yeah. And I failed to mention, but I always like to say, one of the simplest yet most effective ways that you can support museums like the Buffalo Naval Park, like the USS Slater in Albany, New York, is to check out their content. Whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on YouTube, click, like, subscribe, all of that stuff helps them in the long run to not only build an audience, but generate revenue. So if you can donate, by all means, click on the website and give a donation. But if you're not able to do that, but you can watch the content that's being put out there from any museum ship, it's one of the simplest yet best ways you can throw support behind these guys. So don't hesitate. I'm guilty of it. You watch a YouTube channel, you don't subscribe, you like what that channel's doing, but failure to subscribe is a failure to support what they're doing. So just click that button. It's so simple. All right. Let's move on to the USS Slater, Albany, New York. John Epp, curator. Check out their YouTube channel, search for USS Slater, or the website ussslater.org. Connor, thanks for pulling that up. John, what is it frozen over like in this picture?
No, we've got some snow on the ground. The river did freeze yesterday, but it was thawed out by the end of the day. So we're closed down for the season. We are doing winter tours by appointment only, Monday through Friday, at 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. if people are interested. It's strictly interior only because, as you can see in the picture, we cover all the guns and gun directors, so you're not going to see anything outdoors. So we do a modified tour of the ship, but we also will show the engine rooms, the motor rooms, things like that. So we've had a few of those already. We've got some booked out rest of this month and into January. Otherwise, it's just marching along. Some maintenance projects happening that we can't really do during the season. Those are starting to get underway, but it's now just a survival game until April because we don't have any funding coming into the museum. So,
has it always been like that?
yeah, we're never open during the winter. It's just
Okay.
Nobody comes to Albany in the winter.
Yeah. And when you say a survival game, it's not just, it's for you too. In the summertime, it gets super hot in your office, which is in the back.
Oh.
In the wintertime, what's the temperature in your office now?
Yeah, so summertime it's 95 degrees inside the ship. Wintertime in areas with no heat, you're gonna see your breath. So it's tough.
Yeah, and that's John raises an interesting point. Like at the Buffalo Naval Park, we had grants that were suspended because of either Doge and the shutdown, and so that was 6-figure grants that we're working very hard and advocating, and those are a lot of the monies that would keep us afloat during wintertime. And so I know our office manager and a couple, like an ad hoc committee, has been working very hard to try and see those through. And so John might, and Slater and Tim might be, be in the same boat there. Literally. Yes.
Yeah. So we have 2 very successful fundraising campaigns every year this time of year. So we have a fall fundraiser and a winter fundraiser. So our slogan is, donate in the winter to help keep a volunteer warm. So between those 2 fundraisers, it's generally enough to keep everything going without having to dip into our savings. Electric and heating bills, we might spend $5,000 a month on our electric bill, and that's with one small ship. So I can't imagine what Buffalo's having to do.
Well, for the 47 years of our existence, or however long it's been, the contract with the city was the city pays our electric bills. So that's how we get funding. So it's like auxiliary funding from the city. So even though the ships are owned by the city, they don't give us capital grants. They don't give us funding, say, out of pocket every year. They pay our bills.
Interesting. That's nice.
It's nice. Yes. They want to change that. So I believe that's a negotiation over the next year or 2 years to, start having us pay for those bills. And yes, then that means we are paying exorbitant amounts of money that we don't currently pay right now.
You might have to ditch your air conditioning unit that's in your office.
John, that was a good one. I like it. That was funny.
I'm expecting
can I
dead body to follow with that.
Would I be able to survive that? Yes, probably.
Yeah, I'm with you, Connor. Yeah, I'm expecting an over my dead body. you will. Yeah, the only way you'll get my air conditioner is if you pry it from my cold dead fingers.
Oh, nice.
Right.
I do want to say that if you guys talked about The Natural earlier, The Natural was filmed in Buffalo. That's right. Great Robert Redford movie. But even better is Bernard Malamud, the book, The Natural, is unbelievably better than the movie.
Oh, really?
Yes. Of course, great movie, great book. All right. They're wonderful in their own ways, but I
I'm actually looking for a new book to read, and if I'll when I'm done here tonight, I always get some books from the library, and
Fabulous
all
book. Bernard Melmud. Fabulous.
Yeah, I'll check it out. All right, John, anything else going on at Slater?
No, that's it.
All right, moving on to Connor. I want to hear what's going on. A lot of people may not realize, or we haven't mentioned in a while, that Connor is also one of the administrators at the Museum Ships Facebook group. He's not just a pretty face. Yes, he does handle all the comments behind the scenes here on Museum Ship Mafia, but he does a lot at museumships.us. What's everyone talking about over?
Oh, right. Well, like we've all mentioned, it's winter time. So unless you're in the south of the United States, most museum ships are closed. So we've seen a lot of posts from like Alabama, South Carolina, all those, and the European boats are
lost him.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah,
hello.
I got him.
Yeah, Connor, we have
okay. All right, you're back.
Okay, all right, good.
You were gone for me for a bit.
All right. So yeah, things have been pretty steady on museum ships. But one thing I would like to say, I was going to mention this all the way back last month, but we have actually updated our website. So if you go to Museum Ships, all right, in the chat, people, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Oh, yeah, you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if people in the comment section.
I lost him totally. I can hear you, Ken.
Okay.
You lost Connor? Connor, you're doing great. So yeah, just keep going.
Keep going.
All right. Yeah. So we recently updated our website at museumships.us, and we've actually added a new feature to our website where if you go to our website, you will find a subsection which says ship stores, which will actually have a list of all the different museum ships and their online stores if they have them. So if you're looking to buy something museum ship related for Christmas this year, feel free to go there and choose from your content. We have a bunch of ships. We have Buffalo. I think we have Slater listed. We recently added HMCS Haida and quite a few others, both well-known ships as well as relatively unknown ones as well. And if you know of a museum ship which has an online store, which is not on our website already, please feel free to join us at museumships.us on Facebook and just send us a message and say, hey, you didn't include this ship or this thing, and we'll be more than happy to add that to our list as well. But other than that, though, things have been pretty steady. We're seeing a pretty regular amount of people join the group as well. So for anyone new to museum ships who happen to be watching, welcome. And yeah, that's about it. That's been happening at museum ships.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, that was really cool. Wow.
What?
I'm just saying I couldn't hear a word Connor was saying, but I was like, yeah, that's cool.
You'll need to rewatch it again after.
I don't know. It's dead quiet on my end. I don't know what happened because I heard them all.
Shane here to ruin everything. All right. And then last but not least, I want to say one last time, thank you to, here we go, U.S. Navy Commander, retired U.S. Navy Commander Frank Weisser, author of Lead Solo. You know, his stories, we've had a lot of authors, compliments of the U.S. Naval Institute Press on here with amazing stories. Frank was no different. So his stories, relating his experiences as a FA-18 pilot, not only with the Navy, but also with the Blue Angel. Well, Blue Angels is with the Navy. But, and then also being one of the pilots for Top Gun Maverick. Just great stories all the way around. Check out his book. Two links in the description of this video below. One will take you to the U.S. Naval Institute Press. The other will take you directly to Amazon. Check out his book and support Frank's effort.
Yeah.
So again, he was very generous with his time with us for an hour and a half. Definitely appreciate it. And for Shane, Connor, and John Epp, my name's Ken Stano with the YouTube channel History X, and thanks for joining us this evening. Have a good night, everybody.